Hello, Sooner Nation, OU Insider subscribers, Coach Brian Clinton enthusiasts, people who are excited / anxious / invigorated / evigorated. Is that the opposite of unvigorated? About the start of SEC play this weekend in Norman, Oklahoma. This is certainly the podcast for you. This is another episode of the Oklahoma Drill, a podcast fueled by OU Insider and the Rivals Network. I am Jesse Crittenden, and I am joined, as always, by Dad Life himself, Brian Clinton. Brian, SEC?
Yeah, that's gonna be it's gonna be a madhouse down there. At least that's what I'm hoping for. I'm excited to see, obviously, what the team does, but I think I'm equally as excited to see how the fan base shows up. Like, that's what makes SEC football a little bit different is the fan bases, and so I'm excited to see Oklahoma kind of stack up. Because I'll be honest with you, I tried to start watching Tennessee yesterday. Tried to start watching some stuff on them. And I put it on the TV at home. My wife walks out, and it's like literally before a kickoff, they showed like the wide angle shot of Neyland and all the people. And she said, "Oh my God, how many people are there?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's like 108,000. They do it big there." And she goes, "That's who Oklahoma's playing this week?" And I said, "Yep. It's in Norman, but they will have to eventually go to a stadium like that." And she goes, "Man, it's a little bit different." And I said, "Yeah, a little bit different." So it's exciting. I think the fan base will show up, but I am anxious about that. I'm ready to see what it looks like.
Now, a couple things to that. It was interesting. It was Brent Venables and Danny Stutzman that kind of took two different approaches to that subject this week. Brent basically said in his presser, which was incredible. Being in the room for that presser, it was one of his best pressers. If people who are watching this haven't checked that out, you should, because Brent had some all-time zingers in that press conference. But he basically said, "I know OU fans will show up," and like basically talked about it like it's a done deal. And then Danny Stutzman said games start out great, but last weekend, fourth quarter wasn't up to the standard, and kind of challenged OU fans a little bit. And it seems, I'll be honest, Brian, I'm not always super interested in getting to these discussions. Like, even there's a thing about the student section every year, and like, I get it. And Tulane, with it being the start of the second half and a lot of the student section's gone, like, I get it. I'm just not usually that interested in these discussions. I'm just not. I will say I'm more interested in it this weekend because you're right. Like, usually OU has the upper hand, especially when they've been playing in the Big 12. The teams are intimidated to come to them. I don't think I don't think Tennessee is going to be that intimidated. It was even, forgive me, it was one of the OU players that was on the team when OU went to Tennessee in 2015. There was a clip from that game that was posted on Twitter, and one of the players said, the loudest stadium I've ever heard.
Yep.
It's not, I mean, I'm not saying it's not intimidating at all, but for Tennessee, but OU fans are going to have to bring it this weekend. They just don't.
And I think that's going to be the sentiment for this season is how does the fan base, one, how does the fan base travel whenever they're on the road, but two, are they able to defend Norman? Because if you don't have a raucous crowd, if you don't have that equalizer in this conference, you're behind the eight ball because everybody else does. I mean, even the teams that aren't expected to be, contenders year in and year out, going to South Carolina is not an easy place to play. Going to Mississippi State with the Cowbells is not an easy place to play. Vanderbilt is probably the one stadium that isn't talked about in like this held and in some sort of high regard. So I don't know. It'll be fun. I'm excited. I think they'll show up well, but that's going to have to be something that Oklahoma is hanging their hat on, because this is a tough matchup.
No, it is. And for anybody, Brian, I know you have some, but being on the beat the last few years and getting to travel to Kansas and K-State and Iowa State and in West Virginia, like, nothing against those stadiums at all. Some of those places have really cool traditions and really loyal fan bases. They are not like, you go to those places and then you come to Oklahoma and you see the big difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be like that in the SEC, but having said all that, this might be the one time that I'm actually really interested in how the crowd sounds and how energetic everybody is. And Brian, we've got to talk about that, and we've got to talk about what we saw the first 3 weeks of this season for OU, who's obviously 3-0, but lots to talk about from the non-conference and how we think OU fared heading into one of the toughest schedules in the country, their first year in the SEC. A lot of stuff to talk about. But before we do that, you might as well share some really good news. I know you've got an update for people out there about everything with Bennett Clinton. Brian, what's the good news?
He's home, man. He is home. We got home on Monday. It's been an interesting 48 hours. We're recording this on Wednesday. Been an interesting 48 hours just transitioning, but the things that we have to worry about now are just like the normal worries. Just feeding every few hours and sleep, and how the 3-year-old's doing with a new sibling and those things. Would much rather have these worries. And so we're home, and we've still got kind of a road ahead with some doctor visits and things like that, but we are at least home for now and happy. And I wanted to say just thank you so much to everybody who's been reaching out, and support, and the prayers and thoughts have just been overwhelming for me and my family. And so genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. Really there's a lot of passion in this fan base and people that follow, and it shows it up in how they care for their own too. So very cool. And thank you guys very much.
It's just a good reminder again that some things are bigger than football, and as tough as things can be, as tough as life can be, it's nice to celebrate moments like these. And Brian, I'm so happy for you guys to have him back. I know it doesn't mean all smooth sailing from here, but just having him back, I know means huge. Means so much for you guys. Yeah. And I got to tell you, I don't have any kids, but I have a 16-year-old Yorkie at home, and he's about the size of a human baby, give or take. And he can't see or hear very well. So it's basically like having a newborn. So if you need any tips or anything, I can help you out.
I'll reach out.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But again, he doesn't sleep very well, and he keeps me very busy. So
he's a sweet dog. He is
a
sweet dog. I love that dog.
Yeah, he's a good boy. Brian, this is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about in not only reviewing the first 3 weeks of the season for OU, and obviously we haven't talked since OU's 34-19 win over Tulane over the weekend. We haven't talked since then, but in kind of talking about the first 3 weeks and kind of talking about what it means for OU's season moving forward, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was almost more than any other position group, because a lot of attention went to the offensive line, a lot of attention went to Jackson Arnold, a lot of attention went to how good the defense was through 3 weeks, and all those things we'll talk about. I think the running back room may have been the thing that stood out the most to me, and for a lot of reasons, and a big one obviously being that OU just wasn't super consistent at running the ball. I mean, they're averaging 4.3 yards per carry. It's been a little bit of a slow start for the running backs. Jackson Arnold has actually been the biggest part of this running game. He leads the team in carries and yards. He's averaging more yards per carry than both Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk. But I think the thing for me, Brian, has been just the rotation as a whole, the snap counts.
Yeah.
And I asked Brent Venables about that this morning on the SEC coaches teleconference, because one thing I wanted to know is, I think we all saw this as Gavin Sawchuk's backfield heading into the season, and Brian, it has not been Gavin Sawchuk's backfield. I mean, you look at the snaps on the year. So Javonte Barnes actually leads the running backs in snaps, 104. Gavin Sawchuk is second at 60. Big drop. Then Taylor Tatum is right behind Sawchuk with 51, but both of them played more than Sawchuk against Tulane. In fact, Sawchuk basically barely played after the first quarter. I don't know exactly how many snaps, but it couldn't have been more than.
He only had 6 attempts.
Yeah.
I mean, that in and of itself, whenever you look and see that Tatum had 9 and Barnes had 14, that kind of spells it out for you. But go ahead.
No, and Sawchuk only played 21 snaps, I think. And I mean, Tatum and Barnes both had more than him. And then you look at the stats. Javonte Barnes has 31 carries, basically a double more than Sawchuk and Tatum. He has more rushing yards as a result, obviously. But I mean, Barnes averaging 4.1 yards per carry. He's been fine. Sawchuk averaging 2.2 yards per carry. Not fine. And then Taylor Tatum averaging nearly 7 yards a carry and is the only running back to score. He has 3 touchdowns. Barnes and Sawchuk haven't scored yet.
Yeah.
So I was just curious. This has not only been more of a 3-back committee than I thought it would be, but with Barnes basically operating as the lead running back and Tatum really being the most explosive running back through 3 weeks, I asked Brent, what do you think from that running back room? What do you expect? Do you expect all 3 of them to have a role? Do you expect one of them to be the clear guy? And he basically said, we're going to need all 3, but in a perfect world, you would like someone to emerge as the guy, is what he said. And I took all of that to mean a couple of things. One, I think we'll see a rotation again this weekend. And 2, Sawchuk's not the guy. He wouldn't have said someone hopefully emerges as the guy if there was a guy. There's not a guy yet.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you, what's been your impression of this running back room through 3 weeks? And I don't know, dude. I mean, I don't know if this is something you can afford to necessarily mess around with that much, especially this weekend against a really good Tennessee running back or rushing defense.
Yeah.
What have you seen through 3 weeks?
First and foremost, I think the expectation for Sawchuk to be the guy was really obviously just carryover from his end of the year last year. You saw him finally kind of take the reins, and he had 5 games over 100 yards, was in a row to finish the season, and looked like the guy. And you kind of just expected him to continue in that trend. And we heard great things about him throughout the offseason. He was visibly heavier. You could tell he'd put on some good weight. And you heard about Javonte Barnes, but the thing about Taylor Tatum, who for my 2 cents is going to become the lead guy.
He's been your guy since the spring.
He jumped off tape, and you knew that he was special, but with him coming on in the summer, it kind of put him behind the 8 ball to get started. But what I think is working in his favor, which is a little odd to say it that way, the offensive line struggles have really leveled the playing field for everybody. It's not something where Tatum's going to come in and struggle because he's not up to speed on things, because the struggles have been up front. The holes haven't been there. It's really left a lot of their opportunities up to just pretty much athleticism. Is he able to make the cuts and move and make a guy miss, which that really is the difference between Tatum and those other 2 guys. I would really be interested. I don't have it pulled up in front of me. What the forced tackle rate or forced missed tackles rate is for these guys, but I would imagine Tatum is going to end up being a little better than those guys in that regard, because it does seem like he finds his way through trash a little bit better. Now, As for how it looks going forward, I think this week's going to really tell you a lot because there are a couple of guys, it sounds like, coming back on the offensive line that are going to help. You would imagine that any kind of schemes or things they feel really good about that they may or may not have been saving for this game, anything that they're going to feel is going to give them an edge to win this game on the running in the running game is going to be shown this week. And I think who you trust to carry those out is going to be who's on the field. And if it's Sawchuk for the first couple of plays like we've seen, and then you get into the game script and it's Tatum and Barnes who take over, I think that tells us really what the running back room feels like. For me, it does feel like Tatum continues to demand more and more opportunities. And I think at some point, with a guy as talented as he is, you just have to take the reins off and let him go. And I think that we're getting to that point pretty quickly.
Well, Brent said that again, that in that answer that Taylor deserves more snaps or more opportunities moving forward. And I think you have to believe that after, yeah. I mean, he didn't play very much against Houston, which I think surprised a lot of people. But then what do you see against Tulane? He played a lot more and actually was kind of the lead guy in the fourth quarter when OU was needing to bleed the clock.
Yep.
A little bit. So I thought that was interesting. And I also so I have Pro Football Focus pulled up here, and you were mentioning like forced tackle rate and that kind of stuff. So I was curious. I haven't actually looked at this. So yards after contact, Tatum is averaging 3.6. Gavin Sawchuk 1.81. Javonte Barnes 3.1. So Tatum is averaging more yards after contact than both of those guys. And then I wanted to see, I think missed tackles forced. Tatum has forced 3. Javonte Barnes has forced 7. Sawchuk has forced 1.
Got it.
So
that tells us that yards after contact tells the entire story. That's why those two guys are getting more opportunities right now.
Yeah.
It says it right there.
Yeah. No, exactly. And this was the other thing. So what I've seen a lot of people mention is Tatum has looked like the best running back, but the only thing that might hold him back is pass blocking, which is a very common thing for true freshman running backs, especially. This is one of those things where I need to go back and watch film and specifically look at the plays where he's pass blocking, because the eye test does not match up with the Pro Football Focus data, Brian. If you had to guess, what is Taylor Tatum's his pass blocking grade from Pro Football Focus through 3 weeks? If you had to guess.
I don't know, probably like a 70 is a good score, right?
70 is a good score.
I would say like a 68, 67, somewhere in that area.
79.7.
Man, okay.
Sawchuk 65.2, Barnes 41.9.
Wow. Now that's actually almost opposite what I would have expected.
Yeah, same. Now, his run blocking grade is lower than both those guys, but I don't think the sample size is very high considering they're both running backs. Right. The only place where that would seem to factor into me is we've seen the two running back sets, and we've really only seen them with Barnes and Tatum. We haven't seen Barnes and Sawchuk. We haven't seen Tatum and Sawchuk. It's been those two guys, and it was that formation that led to Tatum's touchdown reception in the second quarter. It was a fake handoff to Barnes, dump off to Tatum. I wonder if we'll see more of that. And I don't know, when you hear that pass blocking, does that match? I mean, again, I'm not an expert and I haven't paid super, super close attention, but I mean, essentially an 80 pass blocking grade is like elite.
Yeah.
It's an elite number. Now, Pro Football Focus is not gospel. I want to say
correct.
That.
And that's
it's not gospel.
That's where I would just be cautious with Pro Football Focus, just because it is a great tool, and more often than not, it is correct. But that does seem a little backward, especially with Barnes because I would guess out of the three, that would probably be who I would say has probably been the best or made the most significant blocks in the passing game to this point, at least that I can remember. There's been a couple of times where he's leveled some guys coming on. So I don't know. That makes me kind of wonder a little bit, because if he truly is that much better at pass blocking, then there's really nothing holding him back from being the lead back.
My guess would be, I think Sawchuk will start again on Saturday. I think he'll get the start. I think he'll get a chance. I think he'll get a few early carries to see what he does with them.
Yep.
And if it kind of goes we've seen the first 3 weeks, I think it's again going to be the Barnes and Tatum show.
Yep.
And to me, Brian, this just and look, I don't want to rule out anything from Sawchuk, who also started slow last year.
Correct.
People need to remember he started slow last year. Also, he was injured, so that's part of it. But started slow last year, then came off and was one of the best running backs in the country to end the year. Don't want to forget that. But to me, this just seems like it's trending towards Barnes being kind of your between the tackles bruiser, but with Tatum also being a heavy part of the offense. It just,
yep.
And I think if that happens again this weekend, kind of like you said about, I think we're going to learn a lot. If that's what happens again this weekend, I think you can assume that's what's going to happen moving forward.
Yeah, it's no longer a trend at that point. It's a game plan. Like that's pretty much showing your cards. Now, again, I want to reiterate, it's probably going to be very important to see what they look like, what their schemes look like with a couple of guys healthy again. If you've got a couple of experienced guys on the interior that help you out a lot, then it may change the way things look. I mean, you may see a Hickman get back in there and really change things up on the inside, and Gavin is able to take advantage of some opportunities because there's more there. And he is, make no mistake about it, if he gets through the first level, he's dangerous like that. He is a guy that he's a home run hitter, and we've seen it before. So it wouldn't surprise me if we saw some like a resurgence from him at some point, but it's going to be difficult for that to come against Tennessee. I really like the front seven that they've got. So it's a weird week to be trying to get it right, but if not now, then when?
Well, and the reason why we're talking about this primarily is that, I mean, you mentioned their front seven. I mean, Tulane I keep doing that. Tennessee has a claim as the best defensive line in the country, or they've at least performed that way through 3 weeks. Their rush defense, yes, the quality opponent isn't great. Their rush defense through 3 weeks has been fantastic. I mean, they're top 5 in yards allowed, or they're allowing less than 56 yards a game. And that puts, and I mean, and Brent said they've got to run the ball if they want to do anything down the field in the passing game, which they have not done through 3 weeks. Yep. And this puts a lot of the focus on, the offensive line for OU, which is, I thought against Tulane, they made they took some steps forward, especially in that first half.
Yep.
Then had some not great moments in the second half, particularly late third, early fourth. It's been so hard to evaluate this group through the first 3 weeks, Brian, because I mean, Josh Bates is basically the 4th string center, basically.
Yep.
When you think about Branson Hickman, Troy Everett, Garen Hatchett, I mean, and he has played every snap the last 2 games. And then with Branson Hickman being out, with Jake Taylor being out, with Garen Hatchett being out, it's just been really hard to evaluate this group. I don't know about you, Brian, but I did think we saw some positive things when Logan Howland came into the game, or excuse me, when Heath Ozada came into the game.
Yeah,
at left guard, that moved Jake Sexton to left tackle. Yep. It was Josh Bates at center. It was Fabechi Wiwu at right guard, Tarquin at right tackle. I thought we saw some good things out of that group, even if Ozida and the offensive line missed a pretty bad block on that pick 6.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think
that
of this group through 3 weeks?
that has been that group of five right there has been probably their best to this point. I think across the board, just as far as like what they're capable of. Um, I think that obviously that changes when you get some other pieces back, but for what they showed in last week, I think that that's really what gave them the most room in the running game. That's really what allowed them to kind of run their offense the way that they wanted to. And I think the biggest thing is that that five really provided them the opportunity to get ahead of the chains on first and second down and allow them to continue the drives and set themselves up in third and manageable instead of, the 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 that Oklahoma had been in majority of the first two games. And so uh, I think that's promising because that tells me with Sexton and Tarquin opposite each other at left and right tackle, uh, with obviously Fabechi's been the one guy that's kind of stuck in his own spot. But when you have those three guys in their spots and then you hopefully just continue to bring Ozida along, get Everett hopefully back and get Hickman back at center, I think that you have a good group there. Now, is it the elite 2019, 2020, 2020? No, it's not that unit, but I think it's plenty good enough for Oklahoma to do what it needs to do offensively. When you have a guy like Deion Burks, when you have a guy like Nick Anderson, hopefully coming back, and you have the weapons that you do at tight end, and then a quarterback who can make any throw you want him to, you just need to be adequate at the offensive line. You need to be good enough to move the football in the run game, and I think that five can give that to you. And then hopefully, like I said, there's a couple guys back in the fold that should only help you improve. So I like it. It's just this is going to be a very stiff test. This is a tough matchup for the Oklahoma offensive line. It is. There's no two ways about it.
Well, and I think again, it's almost hard because I agree with everything you said, but I also think it's hard even trying to judge it heading into this weekend because look, we're recording this before the availability report comes out. If people don't know, the SEC has started requiring this year for teams to start releasing daily availability reports starting Wednesday evenings and release them every day up until the game for all conference games.
Yeah.
I don't know what exactly we'll learn from it because there's a little bit of flexibility in terms of how you can list players on there. I would expect we'll see a lot of questionables. My guess, and I don't want to report this, my guess is Branson Hickman will be back this weekend. That's my guess. I would be surprised if Jake Taylor plays.
Okay.
Both of those guys were suited up. They've both been suited up. They were both suited up against Houston and Tulane and then didn't play. I think Hickman's injury is a little less serious than Taylor's. Getting Branson Hickman back will be very good. I don't know what to expect from Troy Everett in terms of when he'll be back, but it's still hard because I don't know when we're going to see this group fully healthy.
Yeah.
And they don't have time. There's just not a ton of time to get right. And Brian kind of segueing this into talking about Tennessee. It's just, let's talk about the Tennessee defense first, because now for one, so let me back up. So it's a 6:30 game on Saturday, be on ABC, College Game Day, obviously coming to town. There's a Tulane defense that has basically been good at everything.
Tennessee.
God, do I keep on saying Tulane? Why?
Why
do I keep doing that? Is it because I have the dynasty with Tulane and CFP 25?
Yep.
I think that's what it is. Tennessee's defense has been good at everything. And let's just say this now so we don't have to keep saying it. Yes, they haven't played anybody very good. Tennessee outscored its non-conference opponents 193-13.
It's pretty good.
Best margin of victory for an SEC team through 3 weeks in conference history. Their defense ranks top 5 in rushing defense, and they've been one of the best secondaries in the country. But that pass rush and rush defense in particular has been incredibly good. They haven't given up a rushing touchdown yet. And while there's a lot of things to look at for OU's offense that they need to do better. I don't think OU has to score 50 points to win this game. They just need to move the ball a little bit better than they have.
Yep.
And that's going to be really hard against this Tennessee defense, man. I mean, with James Pierce and everything they've got up front, the sack numbers and tackles for loss numbers won't blow you away. What will blow you away is that unit has just been really good from top to bottom. Brian, for me, OU's got to be able to run the ball. That sounds obvious. Obviously, you'd like to run the ball every week, but they're going to have to run the ball. They can't have three yards of carry or less against. I mean, you're not going to be able to move the ball, especially for an OU team that, Brian, OU's averaging 4.1 yards per play.
That's just so.
It's 98th.
So, yeah.
98th nationally.
You're used to hearing 7.5 or 8, like close to the top of the country in this area. So that's crazy.
Yeah. So I don't know. What's your evaluation of this Tennessee defense, and how does OU move the ball?
So first and foremost, yeah, like you said, they've only registered 4 sacks on the year, but they haven't really had to do a whole lot on that side of the ball, particularly because they've been up, 31-0 going into the second quarter, or just really blowing teams out. Now, I think the one game, if you're an Oklahoma fan and you want an idea of what you're going to get from Tennessee, NC State is really the only game that you can really pull from and see what they're really like. And that game, the final score may indicate otherwise, but that game was it was 10-3 at halftime. So competitive game, and then NC State throws a pick 6, and that blows the doors open on this game. And Tennessee just goes on to. Or maybe it was 20-3 at halftime. But either way, I mean, it was competitive, and then it just wasn't after that. I think the big thing to take away from it is, as you said, the offensive line or the defensive line there is incredible. I mean, they're big, they're strong, they're quick. It's an SEC defensive line, and it's going to be the biggest challenge Oklahoma's had up front to this point. I think you're right. If you're going to have success in this game, you're going to have to be able to run the football, and that's going to require a couple of things. One, Oklahoma's going to be able to they're going to have to be able to take care of the football through the air, but they're also going to have to be able to force Tennessee to respect the pass. That's been tough to this point for Oklahoma. Everybody's really they've really loaded the box. There just hasn't been a downfield threat for the Sooners so far. So the part of the defense that you can take advantage of for Tennessee is the secondary. They've got some new guys in there. There's going to be opportunities down the field if you can keep Jackson Arnold upright. And so there's going to be a balance to this. If Oklahoma's going to find a way to move the football, it's probably going to be them stretching things vertically to open up more things laterally in the running game. I really think that's going to be the game plan. You have to force Tennessee to respect you as a passing team, and for them to do that, they're obviously going to have to take some shots down the field. That's why getting a guy like Nick Anderson back, we think at this point, is such a big deal. That's one of your explosive playmakers. Him and Deion Burks being on the field together is a formidable duo, and I think with those guys, with Bauer Sharp, you're gonna have to take advantage of those opportunities, because if you're not, Tennessee's just gonna put 7 or 8 in the box, and you're not gonna be able to run the football. Period. Like that's what they've done to this point. In the NC State game, Dalen Smothers, their leading rusher, 25 yards. So you're going to just have to find ways to move the football, and it's going to take balance. And unfortunately for Oklahoma, that's been really difficult to come by at this point.
Man, I start looking at the numbers for what OU has done down the field in the passing game. through 3 weeks. Brian, Jackson Arnold is 2 of 13 on passes with a target depth of 20 yards or more.
Say
2 of
that
13.
again.
2 of 13 with an average depth of target of 20 yards or more. 2 of 13.
How many of those have been drops, does it say?
3. I believe that's what that says. Yes, 3. So actually, this is saying that OU's receivers on the year on passes from Jackson Arnold have 13 drops.
Yep, that sounds about right.
Yep. And when you look at you mentioned how important Nick Anderson, which I expect Nick Anderson to be back. I don't know what to expect from Angelo Anthony.
Yeah.
I don't think it's encouraging that he barely played against in the season opener.
Yeah.
Against Temple and then didn't play at all against Houston and Tulane.
Right.
That's just not a great sign.
Right.
He did warm up without his brace before the Tulane game. That's obviously a big deal. But I think Nick Anderson is a lot closer to playing. And I think if Nick Anderson goes, which I think he will, they're going to need him to play heavy snaps right away.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
That's why you held him out. Because Brian, on the year, Deion Burks has 22 receptions for 169 yards. The 22 receptions is great. It's the most receptions for an OU receiver to start their OU career ever. Big deal. He's averaging less than 8 yards a carry or 8 yards a reception.
Yep.
That's one thing. 2, only 2 other receivers caught a pass against Tulane. It was Zion Raggins and Zion Kearney. They both caught 1.
Yep.
And when you look at the stats otherwise, so Deion Burks has 22 receptions. Brendan Thompson has 6. He's the second receiver in terms of receptions. 6. You're gonna have to make throws down the field. Now, all of this is clouded in. These are not the Lincoln Riley offenses, and this is not a Lincoln Riley team. This team this year and moving forward is not going to win games 52-45.
Yep.
They're just not. That is not the way Brent Venables wants to play. That is not the way he's recruiting. That's not the way these rosters are constructed. They're just not. This is, even at this offense's best with everybody healthy, they're probably not going to score 45 points a game.
Right.
They're not going to take 15 shots down the field a game, but you can't go 2 of 13. I mean, because you're right. Tennessee's athletes are too good. And once they feel that they don't have to defend anything down the field, it's over.
Right.
Getting Nick Anderson back is just humongous in that regard.
And just kind of segueing off of that, this is a conversation. I don't even remember who it was with, but I think it's important for Oklahoma fans to kind of level with this. For the longest time, I mean, for the last however many years, even in the 2 years that Jeff Lebby was calling plays, Oklahoma fans, myself included to some extent, people watching the games, taking it in, you almost find the identity of the football team in the fact that you're able to score points at will. Like that's how you go into a game with confidence as a fan of this team. How many are we going to have to score this week? 50? Okay, they can do that. Like Kyler Murray's going to be able to do that. Jalen Hurts is going to be able to do that. Like you're going to be able to knock those points off the scoreboard. Like that's just what they were able to do. The identity of this team has flipped. It is now a defensive-minded football team. The importance of time of possession, the importance of field position, the things that it takes to win games the way that Brent Venables wants to, it's going to be a mindset change for this fan base. It just is. And that's something that we're going to have to see transition. And it may take a few seasons, but at some point, winning games 16-12 or 34-19 is no different than winning games 45-40 or 52-38. It's just a different philosophy. And I think that's probably why the outcry about the offense has felt so bewildering. Like it's just people just cannot fathom that Oklahoma is not scoring points at will. And it's simply because that's what Oklahoma has done for so long. And so it's an adjustment. It is, but I do think the way that the roster is constructed, if you can get a if Jackson Arnold in the offense can score 35 points a game, which would be, put him right around like that top 25, top 30, top 40 offenses in the country, you should be able to win every game on your schedule with the style of defense that Oklahoma is playing. It's just a different style of football.
It is, and it's honestly been important for me too to get that through my head because I mean, look, I've watched every OU football game since I was 5 years old.
Right.
I mean, and I watched every game under Lincoln Riley. If you want an example or the biggest evidence yet as to how different this football team is under Brent Venables compared to Lincoln Riley, it's the first 3 games of this season.
Yep.
And it's been an adjustment for me too. Now, all of that being said, this offense still needs to play better,
Absolutely.
obviously.
Yeah.
But this defense is going to be why OU has success if it has success this year. It's the reason why they won against Houston and Tulane.
Yeah.
It's the defense. And that's why, but look, we're going to get the first real test for this defense this weekend because this Tennessee offense has been the best offense in the country through 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
They're averaging almost 64 points per game. It's first in the country. They're top 5 in rushing offense. They're averaging over 335 rushing yards a game. Passing offense is 22nd, but that's mostly because Tennessee hasn't had to pass the ball. They haven't had to do that much. They're averaging 8.1 yards per play. It's 5th in the country. By every statistical measure, this has been one of, if not the most explosive offense in the country. Look, their wide receivers are good. Running backs are good. Nico at quarterback is just, as a redshirt freshman, has been really good. Now, actually, I'm going to publish a story about this on OU Insider tomorrow. His numbers compared to Jackson's numbers, actually, because both guys were 2023 quarterbacks. Both were 5 stars. Both are making their 4th starts this weekend. Both are making their first SEC start this weekend. Their numbers are actually pretty comparable, actually amazingly so.
Yes, they are.
Except Nico's been a little better as a passer and Jackson's been a little better as a runner.
Yep.
But there's no doubt Nico's been really good, and this Tennessee offense has been fantastic. And Brian, we're going to learn so much about this defense this weekend. But one thing is for sure, the defense is going to have to make plays. I think they're going to have to get takeaways. They're going to have to eliminate. I mean, you're going to somehow, this defense is going to somehow have to limit explosive plays while limiting the run game. I mean, Tennessee's averaging almost 7 yards a carry.
Yep.
There's just so many things. I don't think it's realistic to expect OU to shut out Tennessee by any means, but if Tennessee gets going and this turns into a shootout, OU's dead on arrival. So I don't know. What's the most important thing? Because, I mean, obviously you need to limit explosiveness, but I think OU's got to they've got to limit the running game. I think they've got to put this in the hands of Nico, who is a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a great quarterback. It's his first SEC game, first true road game. He did throw 2 picks against NC State. Maybe you put this in his hands and you rattle him a little bit. Because to me, I think first and foremost, OU's got to stop the run.
Yep.
And Sampson at running back is a hell of a runner. He's been great through 3 weeks. What are you looking for, and what does this defense need to do?
I think you nailed it. It's stop the run. Sampson's got 45 for 357 and 9 touchdowns through 3 games. He's been one of the more productive running backs in the country. And I think that really tells the story about what Tennessee wants to do. They want to come in, they want to run the football, they want to be physical up front, and they want to pound the ball down your throat and allow those opportunities downfield to open up for Nico. Like that's what they want to do. Josh Heupel is You've seen it at Oklahoma before. He likes to spread defenses out laterally. He loves to use the screen game. Likes to get athletes out in space, and then likes to use that to draw safeties up and hit guys over the top. Like that's what Tennessee's going to want to do. They want to draw you down into the box, help on the screen game and help in the run game, and then throw it over the top. What Oklahoma needs to be able to do is they need to be able to trust Stutzman and McKenzie and whoever the four are on the offensive. Those 6 or 7 guys need to be able to handle Tennessee's running game. If they do, Oklahoma's going to have a really good shot at playing well defensively. I think if you can limit them and set up third and long situations where Oklahoma can get after the quarterback a little bit. I think if there's a guy out there that you want calling plays, or there's a guy out there that you want to be on the sidelines when it comes to lighting up a young quarterback, it's Brent Venables and really, I guess, his clone to a lesser extent with Zach Alley. So I like that thought process for Oklahoma. You know, honestly, and again, this is going to be another adjustment for us in SEC play. This game to me feels like what you would expect the Red River rivalry game to feel like. Like that's what it feels like going into it. And with that being the sentiment, I would almost say the winner of this game had the higher rushing total. Like that's kind of what it feels like. That's what Tennessee wants to do. If Oklahoma is able to have balance on offense, they'll be able to run the football. And I think the two defenses are going to really dominate the game as far as like the tempo and things go. Because Tennessee's going to want to go fast, but if Oklahoma's defense is able to get off the field early, I think you probably see them have to slow things down a little bit. So it'll be interesting. It's a very intriguing matchup because I think this is a game that, obviously both teams coming into this know how important it is, but I just don't know that. I don't know that Tennessee is going to walk in to Norman and do what a lot of its fan base expects them to do. I just think that's going to be a tough thing. But at the same time, Oklahoma better be ready because this is a huge step up in competition. Tulane's a good football team, but Tennessee looks like a great football team.
To me, this really comes down to I'm looking at 2 guys on this defense, Brian, that need to step up. R. Mason Thomas, who was incredible in the fourth quarter against Tulane. That was his coming out
so good
party. That's his breakout party. 3 sacks in the fourth quarter alone, forced fumble, pass breakup, fumble recovery. I mean, kind of put the clamps down in the fourth quarter.
Almost on consecutive plays, all of that. 3 of them were on consecutive plays.
Yeah. That was the potential he's always had. That's why Brent Venables, when I asked him last year about R. Mason Thomas, said he was the best defensive end on the team.
Yep.
This has got R. Mason Thomas written all over it. And to me, it's Dominic Williams.
I like that.
It's those 2 guys. Now, I know they're both on the defensive line, but like both of those guys need to have standout performances.
Yeah.
They are the 2 that are the most have the most potential to do that on the defensive line, and you're going to need Dominic Williams to be a force in the run game, and you're going to need R. Mason Thomas to get after Nico.
Yeah. No, and don't discredit yourself for saying they're both on the defensive line. That's where these, like we've talked about it for months and months and months, that's where these games in this league are won. It's the truth. And so when you look at Dominic Williams, like that's why you brought him in. He has to be that guy for you. Dejon Terry's another guy. Like, I mean, this is he's playing against his former team here.
Yeah.
He's coming off a really good game, a really good performance. Those guys on the interior, those 2 and Jaden Jackson, you've got to force double teams and you've got to keep your linebackers clean in this game. Like that's going to be such a huge chess match in the middle of the game. If those guys can really clog up the running lanes in between the tackles, it's going to help Oklahoma's defense out a lot. if they get washed down and Stutzman's got somebody on him before he sees Sampson, it's going to be a long night. I mean, pretty much cut and dry.
I'm curious who OU's going to play at linebacker next to Stutzman, because Kobe McKenzie got his first start against Tulane. Thought he played pretty well, but is it Lewis? Is it McKenzie? Is there any chance Deshaun McCullough, who I think we've kind of forgotten about?
Yeah, if McCullough is back in the fold this week, I would say this might be a good opportunity to get him going, just because he is a lengthy, athletic guy. To me, I think it's got to be Cook Lewis that starts. Just his ability to cover space and how physical he is. He's made a lot of strides, but McKenzie looked good too. So I think that's probably like the position group I am least worried about in this game, just as far as like productivity. They're going to have their opportunities. I am really curious what some of the blitz packages look like, though, because it all plays into that kind of game for Oklahoma's defense. It really does. Like the crowd, as we kind of talked about at the beginning, the atmosphere, it's game day. Everybody's going to be watching. Nico is a young guy. This offense likes to cut it loose down the field. Like it all sets up for Oklahoma to blitz. And like that's those early 2000s Oklahoma teams that we grew up on. That's really, they lived and died by the blitz, and more often than not, it worked out. And so I get that feel from this game, which is exciting. So it'll be fun.
Speaking of those 2000 teams, what do you think the reception is for Josh Heupel, who, look, I mean, I was a kid when Josh Heupel was doing that. I mean, he was kind of the iconic OU player to me growing up, him and Quentin Griffin.
Yeah.
I mean, he holds a special place in my heart. He just does as a young kid. I am shocked at the amount of younger fans that don't really have a memory or even a knowledge of what Heupel meant to this program. It's a little, I mean, this is a huge game and OU needs to win. There's still a lot of, not older people. The fan base is all over the place in terms of ages and experience. There's a lot of people who remember Josh Heupel and how big he was for the program. Brent told some amazing stories and said some amazing things about him during Tuesday's presser. What do you think the reception is for him? I really don't know what to expect.
I think it honestly depends on how the university goes about welcoming him back. If there is some sort of montage where you see him, up after they won the national title, and if there's something like that where it kind of recalls or brings back those memories, I think it would be weird for there not to be some sort of standing ovation. Like, this is one of your guys returning. He's a Sooner before he was a Volunteer. Like that's just the truth. Now, when the game starts, I think it flips, obviously, and that's how it should be. But if there is some sort of welcome back to Norman, Josh, which I think there should be, I have no idea if they're going to do anything like that. If there's something like that, I think the reception is warm. I think it's probably an emotional moment for him and for a lot of people. But once that game starts, man, I think it kind of, that switch gets flipped and it goes into nightmare mode being on that opposite sideline. So that would be my expectation. I honestly, I'll be extremely disappointed if there's not some sort of reception for him. Like just selfishly,
even if it's brief.
Yes, like
even if it's brief,
it just needs to be welcome back, Josh, like 30 seconds on the video, or even welcome back, Tennessee head coach, like something. Just recognize the guy, because he really was, outside of Bob Stoops, that face of that team that brought Oklahoma back to prosperity after being down for so long. So it's huge. I mean, I'm not emotional about it, but like it is a really big moment. And as somebody that's followed this program for so long, it's something I'm incredibly excited about.
I'll tell you this. I think I think it'd be pretty hard pressed to find 15 players that mean more to OU than Josh Heupel.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if you could find 10 in terms of their legacy and impact.
Yes. Yeah.
What they actually did for the university. And I think it's, and again, I'm not trying to speak like some expert. I was young when all this was happening, but I think it's easy to forget how bad OU was from 93 to 98, how much even the step in the right direction the 99 team was that went 7-5, yep. But nobody thought OU was going to win the national championship in 2000. No,
their schedule in 2000 was likened to it was kind of like what they're going into right now.
I mean, they weren't ranked.
Yeah, it was.
OU wasn't ranked.
Right, and they had Murderer's Row, and Heupel led them through all of it, man. Oh, like I'm getting a little bit of goosebumps just thinking about it because it was a really cool moment in OU football history, and I think you're right. I say 10. I don't even know if there's 10 guys. I mean, there's names out there, but I think Heupel comes up on that list pretty quick.
My favorite story is the story at the championship game, the Orange Bowl against Florida State, when they go to the coin toss, and it's Chris Winkie who won the Heisman that year. And Josh Heupel finished as the runner-up, and it's Torrance Marshall meeting Chris Winkie at midfield and saying, "You took my boy's trophy. I'm here to get it back." That's just an incredible. It's such a badass thing to say, especially to follow that up with a 13-2 win where the Florida State offense didn't score.
Yeah,
I mean,
incredible. God.
Knowing me, if I tried to say something that cool or iconic, it would blow up in my face immediately.
I'd fumble over the words. I would just never. Good luck.
That's up to you. Oh man, I'll be honest, man. I'm so excited for this game this weekend. I think it's gonna be a great game. I think it's gonna be a great atmosphere. We've known this is coming for 3 years, and holy cow, it's here. I kind of can't believe it's here. It's surreal.
It is surreal to see the logo on the chest and next to the OU logo and like on the backdrop for press conferences is one thing, right? Like it's one thing to see that. It's one thing to see the flags come out with the pride and to see the band with all of these SEC flags, and you've got the team flags up at the top. It's one thing to see all of that, but to be a part of SEC football and to actually see two programs like Tennessee and Oklahoma going at it, it's just wild, man. And then you follow it up, like, not to jump ahead, but then you follow it up with a trip to Auburn. Like, it's surreal. It's so cool. And it's really cool to be a part of it. Like, just history, like covering this team. It's pretty awesome.
We'll have everybody covered over at OUinsider.com and here at the OU Insider YouTube channel. Never a better time, genuinely, than right now to become a VIP member. Over at OUinsider.com, we will have all kinds of game coverage. We will all be there to provide written content. You'll have all the press conferences, all of the media availabilities immediately following the game, all kinds of content you're not going to want to miss. Make sure to become a VIP member today at OUinsider.com. Make sure to like and subscribe this OU Insider YouTube channel. We will have you covered with all things OU football and OU athletics here on this channel every single day. This is the weekend we've been looking forward to for 3 years. This is the weekend you guys have all been looking forward to for 3 years. Make sure to join with us as we go on this crazy ride in the first year in the SEC. We'll be back next week on the Oklahoma Drill to break it all down. Till then, we'll see you guys next time.